Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guest today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. And today's episode, we got a good one. We're talking about press releases and how to use press releases to increase your marketing and your brand awareness. This is an episode, or a topic at least, that I don't know that we've covered on this show all that extensively. I know we've kind of dabbled around press releases and different methods of PR, but I think we're going to go deep in this one and really explore what it means for your business and how to get your name out there a little bit more. So I have an expert with me, Mickey Kennedy. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So we're already off to an awesome start for the listeners. We had a battle with a leaf blower outside, but we're good to go. I think we're all set here. Mickey, can you help me understand though, when you say, leveraging PR and press releases in particular, what do you mean by a press release for those who have never heard the term?
Sure. So a press release is basically an announcement to the media. It's written in the third person. You may have a quote where you talk in the first person, but generally it's a very top-down approach, sort of, they call it the inverted pyramid, where you launch with a hook or your headline and your most important information, your who, what, when, where, how, and why covered in the document. It's usually 400 to 600 words, and they're usually pretty dry. They're not like advanced writing or anything like that. It's basically the building blocks for journalists who can look at that and then turn it into an article. The end goal is to have articles written by the journalists. We call that earned media. There are a lot of players out there that do syndication, and even when we send out over the wire, there's a little bit of syndication that happens, and that's when the press release itself gets replicated on a few websites, but that's really not very important, and very few people see that. The ultimate goal is to get those articles written by journalists and out there naturally in the media universe.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's interesting because nobody wants to read dry material, right? Especially if they're consuming content, they want it to be entertaining and engaging. So the strategy is actually to get somebody else to use that and write a story about you. Where are we sending the press releases to then? Is it news outlets, media? Is it the journalists themselves? What's the strategy there?
Right. So we distribute through PR Newswire. It's the oldest and largest newswire of press releases in the U.S. It's basically a duopoly. There's Business Wire and PR Newswire. You don't need to send to both. Journalists will check both of them because there's two ponds to fish in, and they would really be missing something if they skipped out and didn't go to both of those. There are people who I started doing email, and I sent that's where the E and E releases came from, and I was a matchmaker, just sending press releases directly to journalists through email. But what's happened over the last 25 years that I've been in business is basically the email inboxes of journalists have become overwhelmed. There's a lot of off targeting. The thing that's happened is there's media databases that you can license yearly. And when a golf club company spends, $12,000 to license a media database, and then realize there's only 2,700 journalists who exclusively are interested in golf, so they start talking themselves into saying, "Hey, bankers and business people buy golf clubs, so let's send this to financial analysts and journalists who cover business." And the truth is, you're never going to get a financial analyst to write a review of golf clubs. It's just not going to happen. But that happens every day in every industry. And as a result, a lot of journalists are just overwhelmed with email. And so it makes it very difficult to reach them through that, which makes it very difficult for PR firms that are pitching by email. A lot of them still have to pick up the phone and call and walk the journalists through how to find their pitch that they emailed to them.
The phone. What's a phone, Mickey? What is this technology here? Do people still use those?
They do, and journalists generally answer their phone.
Interesting.
You may reach voicemail, but journalists are constantly looking for stories. It used to be that at a healthy news outlet, a journalist might write 2 or 3 articles a week, and now because of the economics situation of media, they might be expected to do 2 to 3 articles a day. So they are always looking for a good tip, a good story idea. They don't want to be distracted if it's just not newsworthy or something that's not relevant to them. So you definitely want to do your homework for pitches, and PR firms are usually very good at that.
Yeah, I have so many questions. This is a fascinating topic to me. I want to understand what is newsworthy, especially for a small business and entrepreneur. But um, before that, I'm curious because that demand is incredible. From 2 to 3 a week to 2 to 3 a day is a crazy jump. And with the kind of mass adoption of social media and just many different platforms serving a different audience, is it harder now? Are journalists maybe struggling to compete with that easy to digest 30-second video that some could call media or news? And how do they balance that between actually picking newsworthy articles to write about?
So it has gotten a lot more competitive. There's a lot more places where people are getting their news from. The good news is that the Newswire is very accepting of media of all types. I follow somebody called Snackalator on TikTok who does a weekly roundup of new snacks hitting grocery store shelves, and he pulls the images and the announcements directly from press releases. And so, people are getting their stuff from the Newswire that we don't generally think of as traditional media. There's a lot of Instagram influencers who are really heavy in fashion. They also can get access to the wire. And the real value of having access to the wire, I mean, all the stuff's publicly available. So if you hunt it around, you can find it. But if you have access and a login with, say, PR Newswire, for example, as a media outlet, you can sort of tailor the feed that you see. So it could be industry specific, but you could also exclude or include certain keywords so that it's really relevant to what you're seeing. It's the exact opposite of their inbox, which is off target and it's just full of spam and things that aren't really relevant to them. Where the feed that they see in the newsrooms on PR Newswire and Business Wire are very succinct and they're just really relevant to their industry, and that makes it very easy for them and makes them very reliant on getting content from the wire. There
Yeah,
are types of wires as well that people probably familiar with, like Associated Press or AP, Reuters, and they work on a different business model. They don't move press releases. They move articles that they've written and they license those to news outlets. So you'll often see in your local paper, it'll say AP and then a story of like a Supreme Court ruling or something like that. So rather than their staff having to write that article, they can just pay a fee, or maybe they already have a subscription with AP and they just pull that article and publish it without one of their busy journalists having to write that article.
yeah, no, very interesting. Back to the previous question though, what does make something newsworthy?
Right. So it really is, are you giving the journalists the building blocks for them to write a story? Journalists like a story arc. Even if it's 2 or 3 paragraphs, they still like to carry people on a journey. And, it's something that's innate in us since we're, babies being read stories, to now. There's a natural that things cycle up and there's a climax and sort of a denouement type of situation. And that happens in successful articles. If you read a good article, whether it's a magazine or a newspaper, it will follow that same sort of format. And, for example, the most common press release I get at eReleases is a product launch press release. It's obviously newsworthy to the company because this is their new big thing. And, but it's usually, here's our new big thing. Here's a list of features. Sometimes they're even just bullets of features. And then here's a page to learn more and buy. That's not the ingredients for a story. And so those fail because of that. What could you do to make it more relevant for a journalist? you could inject a use case study. Someone who maybe was losing 7% a year in net losses, and they integrated your, let's say it's a logistics software solution, and the end of a 120-day trial, let's say that they were projected to have a 5% net profit for the first time. And that's a pretty successful turnaround in such a short period of time. Then you have a quote by them, and you could actually even also take publicly available data and incorporate it in there, saying, this company is not alone. 57% of most small businesses in transportation fell in the first 3 years because they can't get their numbers under control. And with our solution, we do that. So it really shows the stakes of why you're so important. So, realize that a journalist is busy. They are gatekeepers. They're looking for what to let through, what's going to entertain or educate their audience. Ideally, it should do both. And, what could you do to make your message more fit that? And you really can. You could really accomplish what you want by adding some ingredients in a press release that allows them to, more readily create a story arc.
Yeah, I like that. I was going to say, based on what you're saying, it sounds like you need to paint that story in your pitch to make it easier for them to digest. But I mean, I know we've talked about this on this show. I can't recall an episode. It's been a number of them, but using stories in your business, in your marketing, in your hiring, it's just human nature. And you mentioned this too, is we grab onto stories. So is that just the way we should be thinking if we're going to go down this path, is making things easier for both the journalist, but then also the end reader to digest the story?
Right. Absolutely. We work with about a third of the people that appear on Shark Tank. The producers recommend that they do a press release before their episode airs. And the one thing I've learned from Shark Tank is the first thing almost all of them do when they get out there on the stage is they share their story, their journey. And sometimes it's inspirational. Often it has obstacles. It's often them being vulnerable. And, like they got laid off or they lost their father and they used to have a hobby business and they were wondered, that they were taking time off to have a kid. And they're like, I wonder if I could start a business in this space. And the reason that all of them do this is because it really humanizes them and gives us a human interest element. It injects that immediate empathy. And that's the most powerful part of storytelling. And so, don't discount that, where appropriate, talk about your story. It doesn't have to be very long. It could be part of your elevator pitch. In most press releases, there's a section towards the bottom. We call that the boilerplate. And it's usually, you'll notice it because it says about company. And so it'll be about Microsoft's one. And it's usually, 3 to 6 sentences that gets recycled. It's often the same thing in every press release. They update it, of course. But that's a place where you can put your, moments of your story. And for a journalist who is looking at 2 press releases with equal newsworthiness, and they see that, there's an inspirational story or a strong human interest element in your boilerplate, that might give you an advantage. Another thing that could give you a really good advantage is having an amazing quote, because the journalist writes the article, but they often utilize the quote that's there. And so often the quotes that we get are safe. They look like they've been written by committee. They don't say anything that, basically requires that they be included in an article. So things that you could do to make sure that your quote gets included is say something so strong, so succinctly, that if the journalist was to just paraphrase it, there'd be a loss. For one, it would be more wordy. And secondly, there would just be an ache of like, wow, really was said so much better in that quote. I don't know why they didn't use it. They will use it. And if a journalist is looking at 2 equally newsworthy press releases and one has a solid, amazing quote, they know that they can write around that and really elevate that and have a really great article. Where if they're looking at one that has a very soft or weak quote, nothing they can do can fix that. And so that's one thing that you really want to spend some time on.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And you did just mention it, so I want to ask about it. And you also mentioned some other companies prior to recording that you've worked with. Shark Tank, though, that's obviously a huge brand, and you're working with a third of these companies. Can you give me an example of something you've done for whether it was a company on Shark Tank or similar to that, where they contracted you to write press releases and get them in the media? And what did that do for them? What was their experience?
Right. So almost all of them have never used us for writing. And I would say that most people can write a really good press release. And now with Chat GPT, you can lean on that quite a bit. I think that the thing that people should focus on is what they're writing about. And that's where you really need to be more strategic and newsworthy. Squatty Potty did, I think, over a dozen releases with us when they first launched. They'd been around a while, but when they first launched after Shark Tank and really injected a lot of energy and got into a lot more stores and things like that. Manscaped did the same thing, lots of releases. And that follows a pattern. A lot of these companies that do commit to a PR campaign will do anywhere from 6 to 20 press releases, anywhere from 6 months to a year, and they will get media pickup. It probably helps that they were on a national TV show. But that being said, they also are really skilled at writing about things that are really relevant. And with Squatty Potty, they were doing a lot of viral, almost commercials online, some with unicorns and soft serve ice cream sort of thing in the aspect of their product. And they would use the press releases to sort of get eyeballs over to those so that people could sample them and they could get more viral. What I see with a lot of startups is they will build a base of articles that they get that earned media. They'll put them on their website. They'll link to them. They'll take screenshots of them. They will put them all over their website. Then they'll turn on paid advertising. And what they know is that once they have, the recognition from Shark Tank and the recognition from all these articles, their conversion rate is going to be much, much better. And so they generally then focus on paid advertising moving forward. And I find that is a pattern that a lot of startups do, where they build a really strong base of getting earned media, and then they turn on the paid advertising.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense too. It's human nature. If you go on a website and you see as seen on Shark Tank, NBC, CNN, whatever, it validates the brand. There's a trust factor there versus just seeing a paid ad for a poopy stool and saying, what is this thing? Shout out to Squatty Potty though. I'm a huge fan. And if you're willing to sponsor the show, we'd love to have you because I love the product. All jokes aside, but this is Mickey. This is an awesome episode. There's so much here, and I could probably talk to you about this for the next 6 hours. And I'm sure you would not get tired of talking about it either, because this is what you do. But where can the listeners go and learn more about this? See if it's a good strategy for their business, and maybe even reach out and contact you.
Right. So I have a free masterclass. It's a video that's less than an hour long that goes through the strategic types of releases you should be doing. It's a great place for someone to start. It's at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. They can also visit the website ereleases.com. They can talk to our editors. We have no salespeople, so you can chat, email, or call during business hours. And the free masterclass is really good because 97% of press releases don't generate earned media. And what I did during the pandemic was look at the releases that get picked up again and again, and there are a lot of patterns. And I go through the types of releases you should be considering, and if you go through that masterclass, you should walk away with maybe a dozen ideas of strategic types of press releases that will give you a real benefit if you do build a PR campaign.
I love this so much, and I am thinking too, as you're saying this, and as you described the strategy for Squatty Potty, Manscaped, and others. You said build that base, build that foundation of trust, and then turn on the paid ads. We just recently had an episode, if not two, within the last month of this episode airing, talking about marketing and paid ads and how to get your name out there. We'll layer on the strategies. That's what I'm hearing is the main takeaway from this episode is that you can build that foundation, you can build that base so that all of those things are more effective for your business, which don't we all want a better return on our ad spend and more earned media for our business? Mickey, thank you so much for being here. This was a phenomenal episode.
Oh, thanks for having me.
For those of you watching and listening, Mickey mentioned the website ereleases.com/plan for the free masterclass. It's on the screen if you're watching. It's down below in the show notes wherever you're watching or listening. So definitely go check that out and subscribe. We want to make sure you come back 5 days a week. We release episodes because we're a little bit cuckoo, but also we just want to help you build a more harmonious business and life. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for being here.